You think you control yourself. You believe you make conscious decisions about how you think, feel, and act. But Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, discovered something that will completely shatter this illusion. You're not controlling yourself. You're being controlled, not by other people, not by circumstances, but by automatic reactions you mistake for choices. Marcus ruled an empire, commanded armies, and made life or death decisions daily. But his greatest victory wasn't over enemies or territories. His greatest victory was over his own mind, and he left us the exact method he used. Not just philosophy, not just theory, a practical system for taking back control of the one thing that actually belongs to you, your responses. Here's what Marcus discovered that no one talks about. Most people live their entire lives in reactive mode. They think they're choosing their thoughts and emotions, but they're not choosing anything. They're just following automatic patterns they learned in childhood, patterns they've never questioned. Someone criticizes them. They automatically get defensive. They think this is normal. Something doesn't go their way. They automatically get frustrated. They call this having emotions. They want something they can't have. They automatically get upset. They think this is just being human. But Marcus understood something that changes everything. None of this is automatic. None of this is inevitable. You're just unconscious of the choice. This video reveals Marcus's complete method for breaking free from unconscious reactivity. 3 powerful parts, each building on the last. If you skip ahead, you'll miss the precision that makes this actually work. So stay with me, because by the end, you won't just understand self-control. You'll have it. Part 1. The Illusion of Control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here's what most people miss. Marcus wasn't talking about positive thinking. He was talking about the difference between reacting and responding. Most people react. Something happens. They automatically feel something. They automatically do something. They think this is normal. They think this is how humans work. But Marcus knew better. Marcus discovered that between every stimulus and response, there's a space, a moment of choice. Most people never see this space. They go straight from trigger to reaction without pause. But that space is where your power lives. When someone insults you, there's a space between hearing the words and feeling angry. Most people skip right past it. When something doesn't go your way, there's a space between the event and your frustration. Most people never notice it. When you're tempted by something unhealthy, there's a space between the urge and the action. Most people pretend it doesn't exist. Marcus spent years training himself to find that space, to live in that space. He called it the discipline of perception. Here's how it works. Something happens. Before you react, you pause. You ask, what is actually happening here? Not what you think is happening, not what it reminds you of. What is actually happening? Marcus understood that most of your emotional reactions aren't responses to reality. They're responses to your interpretation of reality, and your interpretations aren't facts, they're choices. When Marcus received news of military defeats, he didn't immediately react with anger or panic. He paused. He asked, what is the actual situation? What can I control? What can I not control? This pause created space for wisdom instead of reaction. Marcus discovered that most people are controlled by their first thoughts. Whatever pops into their mind first, they believe. But first thoughts aren't chosen thoughts. They're automatic thoughts. Marcus trained himself to catch his first thoughts and examine them. Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this under my control? Most of the time, the answer was no. So Marcus would choose his second thought, his conscious thought. This is why Marcus wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." He didn't mean you can think your way to a perfect life. He meant you can choose your thoughts instead of being chosen by them. But Marcus discovered something that goes even deeper. Most people think their emotions just happen to them. Marcus realized that emotions are created by thoughts, and thoughts can be chosen. When Marcus felt angry at incompetent senators, he would pause and ask, what thought is creating this anger? Usually, it was something like, "They should be more competent," or "This shouldn't be happening." Marcus would then choose a different thought. "This is the reality I'm working with," or "How can I respond wisely to this situation?" The anger would dissolve, not because Marcus suppressed it, because he removed the thought that was creating it. Marcus practiced this thousands of times, in small moments and big crises. He developed what he called emotional discipline, the ability to feel without being controlled by feeling. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming conscious of how emotions are created. And when you're conscious of how they're created, you can influence what gets created. But Marcus discovered that there's something even more fundamental than controlling thoughts and emotions. If you've ever wondered why you keep doing things you know aren't good for you, you're about to understand something that will change everything. Part 2. The root of all loss of control. Marcus Aurelius identified the real reason people lose control of themselves. And it's not what you think. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's not lack of willpower. It's attachment to outcomes you can't control. Marcus wrote, "When you are distressed by an external thing, it's not the thing itself that troubles you, but only your judgment of it." But he went deeper than this. Marcus realized that most distress comes from wanting reality to be different than it is. You lose control when you demand that life meet your expectations. When you think your happiness depends on getting what you want, you become controlled by wanting. When you think your peace depends on avoiding what you don't want, you become controlled by fear. Marcus saw this pattern everywhere. Senators who couldn't handle criticism, generals who couldn't accept defeat, citizens who couldn't tolerate discomfort. They had given control of their inner state to external circumstances. Marcus understood that this is the root of all psychological suffering. The belief that your well-being depends on things outside your control. Your job, your relationships, your health, your reputation, other people's opinions, the weather, the economy. None of these are under your control, but most people live as if they are. They spend their mental energy trying to control uncontrollable things. Then they wonder why they feel powerless. Marcus developed what he called the discipline of desire. Here's how it works. Before you want anything, you ask, "Is this under my control?" If the answer is no, you practice wanting what actually happens instead of what you hoped would happen. This sounds impossible until you understand what Marcus understood. You have two choices. You can want reality to match your preferences, or you can prefer reality as it actually unfolds. One of these gives you control. One of these takes control away. When Marcus wanted military victories but received defeats, he practiced preferring the actual situation, not because defeat was good, but because wanting victory that didn't happen only added suffering to loss. When Marcus wanted his son Commodus to be virtuous, but saw him becoming cruel, he practiced accepting what was actually happening, not because cruelty was acceptable, but because denying reality prevented wise action. Marcus learned to separate his preferences from his peace. He could prefer one outcome while being at peace with any outcome. This is the hardest part of Marcus's method, and the most powerful. Most people think acceptance means giving up. Marcus knew acceptance means seeing clearly. When you stop demanding that reality be different, you can finally work with reality as it is. Marcus wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate associates you." But he didn't mean passive resignation. He meant active engagement with what actually exists instead of what you wish existed. The moment you stop fighting reality, you can start changing what's actually changeable. And what's actually changeable is always, only, your response. Marcus practiced this during the Antonine Plague. Millions died. The economy collapsed. His own children died. He could have spent his energy raging against the unfairness of it all. Instead, he spent his energy responding wisely to what was actually happening. He organized relief efforts. He maintained government stability. He led by example during the crisis. Marcus didn't waste energy wanting the plague to not exist. He used his energy to respond effectively to the plague that did exist. This is what Marcus called the discipline of focus. focusing your mental energy only on what you can actually influence. Most people scatter their mental energy across 100 things they can't control. Then they have no energy left for the few things they can. Marcus concentrated all his mental energy on the one thing that was always under his control, his response to whatever was happening. But there's a third discipline that completes Marcus's method, and this one transforms everything, because Marcus discovered that true self-control isn't about controlling your thoughts or emotions. It's about something much more practical. Part 3. The Discipline of Action. Marcus Aurelius discovered that true self-control isn't about controlling your thoughts or emotions. It's about controlling your actions regardless of your thoughts and emotions. Most people have it backwards. They think they need to feel motivated to act right. They think they need to eliminate negative thoughts to behave well. But Marcus knew that thoughts and emotions are temporary. Actions create character. Marcus wrote, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being." He didn't wait to feel like doing his duty. He did his duty and let the feelings follow. This is what Marcus called the discipline of action. Here's how it works. You decide what kind of person you want to be. Then you act like that person regardless of how you feel. When Marcus felt angry at incompetent advisors, he still treated them with respect. Not because he felt respectful, but because respect was part of his character. When Marcus felt discouraged by endless political problems, he still showed up to govern. Not because he felt energetic, but because service was his duty. When Marcus felt grief over his children's deaths, he still performed his imperial responsibilities. Not because he felt strong, but because leadership was his role. Marcus understood that emotions are temporary visitors. Character is what remains. Most people let their emotions determine their actions. Marcus let his values determine his actions. This created what Marcus called discipline of will. Your will isn't your feelings. Your will is your capacity to act according to your principles when your feelings would lead you elsewhere. Marcus trained this capacity every day. Small decisions, simple choices, constant practice. When he wanted to stay in bed, he got up. When he wanted to eat more, he stopped. When he wanted to avoid difficult conversations, he initiated them. Not because these actions felt good, because they built the muscle of conscious choice. Marcus discovered that self-control is a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with practice. But here's the key insight most people miss. You don't practice self-control in big moments. You practice it in small moments. Every time you choose your response instead of following your impulse, you build control. Every time you pause before reacting, you create space for wisdom. Every time you act according to your values instead of your moods, you strengthen your will. Marcus wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." He meant that conscious living is work, daily work, moment by moment work. But this work creates something that no external force can take away: inner freedom. Marcus developed specific daily practices to build this freedom. He would start each day by reminding himself what he could and couldn't control. He would end each day by reviewing his actions and thoughts. What had he done well? Where had he reacted instead of responded? Marcus treated self-control like physical fitness. It required daily training to maintain. And just like physical fitness, it got easier with practice. But it never became automatic. Marcus understood that consciousness requires constant effort. The moment you stop paying attention, you default back to unconscious patterns. So Marcus made consciousness his full-time job, not just when he felt like it. Every moment of every day. He practiced presence during boring meetings. He practiced patience with annoying people. He practiced wisdom during crises. Marcus turned his entire life into a training ground for self-mastery. But Marcus also understood something crucial. Self-control isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about catching yourself faster when you slip into unconscious patterns. It's about recovering more quickly when you lose your center. It's about being patient with yourself while still demanding growth. Marcus failed plenty of times. He lost his temper. He made poor decisions. He acted from emotion instead of wisdom. But Marcus never used failure as an excuse to stop trying. He used failure as information about where to focus his practice. Every mistake became a lesson. Every loss of control became an opportunity to strengthen control. Marcus wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly beat. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." He didn't mean become hard and cold. He meant become unshakable at your core while remaining flexible on the surface. This is the ultimate goal of Marcus's method, not to eliminate all challenges and emotions, but to develop an inner stability that no external circumstance can disturb. To become someone who can face any situation with wisdom instead of reactivity. To build a character so solid that you can trust yourself to respond well no matter what happens. Marcus proved this was possible. Through plague, war, betrayal, loss, and countless daily frustrations. He maintained his center. He acted from principles instead of impulses. He responded instead of reacting. And he left us the exact method he used to develop this capacity. Now, take a moment and reflect. Think about the last time you lost control of yourself. What happened? What triggered your reaction? What space did you miss? Marcus would tell you that every loss of control is also an opportunity to learn control. Every reaction you regret is data about where to practice response. Every moment you feel controlled by circumstances is a chance to find your inner authority. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming conscious. It's not about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing actions. It's not about controlling everything. It's about controlling the one thing that's actually yours, your response. Marcus spent decades perfecting this skill, and he proved that anyone can develop it. Not through perfection, but through practice. Not through suppression, but through consciousness. Not through avoiding challenges, but through meeting them with wisdom. The method is simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. It requires daily practice, constant attention, lifelong commitment. But the payoff is freedom. Real freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing you can trust yourself. The freedom that comes from not being controlled by your circumstances, your emotions, or your impulses. The freedom that comes from acting from choice instead of compulsion. So if you've recognized patterns in yourself, if you're ready to move from reaction to response, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below about a time when you caught yourself in that space between stimulus and response. Let's practice conscious living together. Share how you've learned to pause before reacting. Share what triggers catch you most often. Share what you've discovered about the difference between thoughts, emotions, and chosen actions. And if this changed how you see self-control, subscribe. This is just the beginning of learning to live from choice instead of automaticity. Because Marcus proved that self-mastery isn't a talent you're born with. It's a skill you develop. And once you develop it, no one can take it away from you. You'll never confuse reaction with control again. But more importantly, you'll never have to. And that's when real freedom begins. That's when you become who you were meant to be. That's when you take back the power that was always yours. The power to choose your response. The power that Marcus Aurelius spent his life perfecting. And the power he left for you to claim.